Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Us, a show dedicated to bringing real help to real couples. I'm your host, Melanie Studley.
What's up, guys? My name is Seth Studley. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and together we are high-performance marriage coaches.
We are cutting through the bullcrap and creating a movement of happy, healthy, badass couples all over the world.
Let's go! All right, guys, what's up? My name is Seth. Welcome to the show. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, along with my beautiful wife, Melanie, who is a high-performance marriage coach. And today we have an interview show, so you guys are in for a treat. We're hanging out with Dr. David Hawkins, and I'll just read a quick bio here. Dr. David Hawkins, MBA, MSW, PhD. For those of you who aren't in the academic field, I know what those letters are. Pretty smart dude, is a clinical psychologist and director of the Marriage Recovery Center. He is a leader and expert in the field of treatment of narcissism and emotional abuse in the context of relationships, and has developed a one-of-a-kind programs to help couples heal and restore their relationships. So, Dr. David Hawkins, good to see you, man. How's it going?
Hey, it's going great, and thank you for this opportunity, folks. I love what you're doing, and I'm anxious to have a dialogue with you about these issues that are so critical and so very important to marriages.
Yeah, right on. So in your bio, two things, one not in your bio, one in your bio. So we are just outside of Seattle as well, down in Maple Valley. And I didn't know that you were in Seattle. So that's pretty cool.
Where in Seattle are you?
Bainbridge Island.
Nice, that's where we got engaged.
Just across the pond.
Yeah, we got engaged there.
We got engaged on, I popped the question, right, on the rocky shores of Bainbridge Island. And
lovely.
Also, your background does not look like you're in Seattle. You look like you're in Hawaii or somewhere in Polynesia right now.
I can't reveal my whereabouts, actually. No, I am in Mexico. My wife and I, we spend 5 months of the dreary time in Seattle, which everybody knows about, from January to May. And in about 10 days, we will be heading home.
Man.
So to enjoy the beautiful Pacific Northwest summers.
Yeah.
You have the exact right idea. I'm from South Carolina, so I've been out here for about 20 years, so I'm used to the gray and the wet, but man, I was talking to a coworker.
Old.
I'm like, we're planning to get out of here during the rainy season. That's for sure. So you got the right idea. But
well, Seattle, look, everybody knows this. Seattle is absolutely drop dead gorgeous for about 4 months of the year, and then maybe 5 months, right? But then not so much.
Yeah.
Right.
Not so much.
Yeah. So where it's the hashtag goals to be in Mexico during the rainy season. So good on you. But so your folks reached out, and we wanted to talk a little bit about, a whole lot around emotional abuse and also narcissism. And I'm a therapist myself, been in practice for about 15 years. And these days, everyone and their mother is throwing out the term narcissism, right? If they have an argument or something, it's kind of like coming to the pop culture language and stuff, which is not really true. If folks really knew what narcissism was, they would say it far less frequently and throw it around way less, right? But in terms of emotional abuse, that one is easily understood, right on the forefront. And I think that a lot of couples, obviously a lot of couples that we talk to and couples that you talk to, have experienced or have participated in some sort of emotional abuse. So if you could take a little time to define those two terms as you understand it, as you see in practice, and then we'll start the conversation there.
It's a great conversation. So narcissism and emotional abuse are typically used interchangeably, and they are not interchangeable. There's overlap. So we all know individuals that are, they're just totally full of themselves. They are, and they speak forth about how full of themselves they are, and they just sort of walk into the room and they suck all the air out of the room. It's all about them. They are selfish. Totally selfish, totally immature, totally demanding, totally controlling, and they destroy relationships. So when we can see them coming, we all can kind of like, whoa, watch out for that person. Emotional abuse, however, emotional abuse, and there's a term that you are both undoubtedly familiar with called covert emotional abuse. So overt emotional abuse, when somebody is dominating and they're angry and they slam doors and they do all manner of bad things. But covert emotional abuse, what about the man or the woman who pouts? Now, pouting is not anything serious, right? Or what if they pout every day? What if every time a person brings a concern to them, they flip it back on them? They are defensive. Now, what about if you're a little bit defensive? Can that last? Can that work out in a relationship? Maybe. What if you're defensive every day? What if you're defensive every time your mate brings a concern to you? So issues cannot be resolved. They cannot be resolved. Oh, it's worse than that. Not only can an issue not be resolved, but I don't want you bringing a concern to me. And if you do, I'm going to flip it back on you. I'm going to make you feel bad. I'm going to put you down. I'm going to tell you that your thinking is wrong. Your actions are wrong. Your behavior is wrong. Your expectations are wrong. You are wrong. Now, the person who does that to their mate again and again and again and again, nobody may see this, Seth and Melanie. Nobody may see this stuff because it may only happen behind closed doors. And yet, if it happens day in, day out, month in, month out, year in, year out, by the time you're into a marriage by 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, now the person has been worn down. There's one emotion, and I'll stop with this, folks. There's one emotion that I hear every day of the week. I was going to ask you to guess it, but I won't have you guess it. The emotion is exhausted, weary, tired. I can't do this anymore. So 90% of the phone calls that come into the Marriage Recovery Center are from typically women, but it could be a man, but they've been married for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. I don't get any phone calls from someone married 3 years. Can emotional abuse happen in a 3-year marriage? Of course it can, but it's worn down year after year. All right, so blurring of narcissism and emotional abuse. Not all emotional abusers are really what we would call narcissistic. Narcissists are emotionally abusive. So anyway, I hope that brings a little bit of clarity to you're absolutely right. The term is thrown around all the time. I would disagree if you said that emotional abuse is understood. It is not understood. It is a pervasive, it's epidemic, and we need to bring far, far, far more awareness to the topic of covert emotional abuse.
It's funny that when you said that, that was the first thing I thought. I was like, I don't think people understand this as much as you think people understand it. But one thing I wanted to ask you too is that we've worked with clients and had, friends and different people that we're in relationship with where the wife is saying, again, I'm just going to don't worry about the genders here, but like the wife will say, every time I try to bring something up, my husband says, well, if you weren't so if you could solve your problems, our marriage would be fine. You have the real problem. Even though it's like, she's like, I want to spend more time together, or I don't feel like you appreciate me, or I want to have my needs met. But it will be flipped around to, well, if you weren't so needy, we'd be happy. So where does that lie in all of this? Is that narcissism? And then the next question would be like, how on earth do you approach healing that, from all the work that you've done?
So that's a great story. And those are the kinds of stories that I hear all the time. I approach my husband and I tell him, I need more warmth and affection. Well, if you only, why don't you? I mean, the problem really isn't me, honey. The problem is you. All right. I did a video recently called The 3 Ds of Narcissism: defensiveness, domination, and dismissiveness. And let's think about all three for just a moment. So the example, Melanie, that you just gave, oh my goodness, that's just ridden with dismissiveness. Oh, no. No. No, you don't have any concern with me. It's really you and your expectations. So now we have defensiveness, we have domination, he or she, but we'll take the gender he. He tells her she's crazy, she's making a mountain out of a molehill. And then we've got the third D, dismissiveness, or the term is called invalidation. And by the way, any emotional abuse has underpinnings of invalidation. What you're thinking is wrong. What you're feeling is wrong. What you want is wrong. I mean, it's just wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. I mean, I hate to tell you this, but you're just wrong. So back off, get away. Don't bring any concern to me because I can't take it. And I'm emotionally immature. He won't say this, but he is emotionally or she is emotionally immature, easily threatened. Like, I can't believe you're bringing this concern to me. Emotionally immature, easily threatened. And then he causes her to doubt herself. And so it is no wonder that it takes 20 years, 25 years, sadly, tragically, for her to say, Dr. Hawkins, I can't, or Melanie or Seth, I can't take it anymore. And then if we're good listeners, we will say, tell us what you're experiencing. And she typically already has invalidated herself because her mate has invalidated her for many, many years. So that's why this is an epidemic, and that's why the problem is pervasive, and it's largely unseen. She is largely a silent sufferer.
How do you begin to, I guess, what's the process of getting someone who invalidates to see that they are invalidating?
Well, first let's back up a step. So I was talking to a woman, I talk to women all the time, and I was asking her the question, how bad are things? How much do things need to change? And I typically ask this question. I ask it like this. How much do things need to change for you to be happy in this relationship? A little bit? Some? A lot? Now, you can guess what the answer always is. It's always, by the way, not 80%, not 72%. It's 100%. And the answer is, oh man, no. So I say, well, what would happen if things don't change? Oh, I'm dying. I'm becoming more depressed. My body is starting to give out. I have autoimmune disorders. I have fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. I can't sleep. I'm anxious. I'm taking antidepressants, and I'm going to my doctor all the time. And that's a whole additional broadcast, by the way, is what the physical ramifications of emotional abuse are anyway. So I ask her, what will happen if nothing changes? Oh, I don't know. No. I don't even want to think about that. Oh, okay. Then our conversation needs to shift to something very uncomfortable, and the word is called intervention. And you know that word. Intervention is the breakdown that leads to the breakthrough. And thankfully, interventions work. Now, they're scary as all get out because, like, really, I have to set a boundary? You do. I'm going to have to write a letter to my mate? You are. And I'm going to have to determine exactly what needs to change? Yes, you will. And by the way, your mate isn't going to thank you for the letter. And I'm not trying to be cute or sarcastic, Seth and Melanie, by saying this, but let's face it. When somebody hands you an intervention letter, you know, you're going to take it and rip it up. I mean, at least emotionally, because I don't want, no, I'm not receiving this. So I have to prepare women. This is to answer your question, Melanie. I prepare women for, you're going to face his wrath. I mean, you're going to face his resistance, his wrath, his all kinds of junk. So let's make sure that you're totally clear about what needs to change. Let's be totally clear about what the path forward is. Oh, well, can I just send him to counseling to my pastor? No, probably not. I mean, no offense to your pastor, no offense to anybody, but this person better be really schooled in the intricacies of emotional abuse. Okay, anyway, so she gets clear about what needs to change. We work with her on writing an intervention letter, and then she does the intervention, and we walk her through that, and then we have her face what's going to happen when you rock the boat. You take on water, your finances are impacted, your children are impacted, your home everything is impacted, but then an intervention opens up the possibility for change. And I'll just quickly say this, Melanie, to answer your question. Then when an individual faces an intervention, it's typically a beautiful thing. After the wrath and the resistance, it's a beautiful thing, because then a person is opened up to the possibility of change. And then that's where our treatment program comes in. And that's where I see lots of possibilities, even though so much of our culture says, oh, no, there's no hope. It's just not true. There's a lot of hope.
I'm glad that you said that, the part about hope, because there's a lady that I follow, Dr. Ramani, and she talks about narcissism all the time, but there's such a negative, and I don't dislike her. I think she's great, but she will say a narcissist will never change. And I'm like, that's so deflating and defeating to hear. And I'm like, I'm glad that you're saying there is hope. I like it.
So maybe that is coming from a clinical perspective. So I know that you've had tons of clients like this, but as I begin to work with people when they're older, probably 35 and above, that's when major personality disorders really start to show. Sometimes there's early onset, but in my experience, folks with it used to be access to personality disorders, those are very, very difficult to treat and change. Not saying that they can't, but maybe just from a clinical perspective, maybe that lady that you follow is speaking of it from that. What is your read on that, Dr. Hawkins?
Seth, I am so glad you brought that up. I literally recorded a video 2 hours ago, and the video is tentatively titled, "Is your narcissist trying to hurt you intentionally? Are their actions intentional?" And Seth, I quoted Wikipedia because I had looked up character pathology, which I want to go out on a tangent and talk about character pathology. So character pathology describes enduring patterns of maladaptive behavior and maladaptive thinking and maladaptive emotions. Enduring patterns. All right, so now you're handing me this 55-year-old woman has called my office, and she says, my husband's nothing but a narcissist. But I do this evaluation and I find out, man, he's been acting badly for 30 years. 30 years. So I need to look at how entrenched, how enduring these patterns of maladaptive thinking, the definition of character pathology is maladaptive cognition, maladaptive emotion, and maladaptive behavior. It's enduring, it's entrenched. So Dr. Ramani, again, I don't know her, but I would say there's some things that she's right about. So I would say to you, Seth and Melanie, if this 55-year-old man, if he's been acting badly for 30 years, these are enduring characterological traits. And not for a second am I going to say to you, oh, yeah, come on, bring him on. And in 14 weeks in our core men's group, we'll snap him out of it. Not going to happen. However, you give me this man for 14 weeks in our core program, and then 14 more weeks in our advanced core program, and then 6 months in our core strength program. And if she's willing to work with me too, and if he's willing, and if there's a breakdown leading to a breakthrough, is there a trajectory that will be ascending? I think so. I think there are possibilities. So Seth and Melanie, I know what we were all trained in, that if it's a character disorder, bad news. It is bad news for sure. It's sobering. It's serious. Are they entrenched patterns? They are. But if you bring the right kind of treatment, and if it's a holistic approach, And if there's accountability, that's another term, by the way, that we should spend additional time on sometime, is what does real accountability look like? But if this man or woman is really held accountable for change and given the right kind of treatment, I don't align with Dr. Ramani or others that say no hope at all. I don't.
Yeah, it's. I really like that you say that you language it in that way. Like, okay, a pervasive pattern of 30 years, probably most likely in like the pathology formation, stemmed from something traumatic, or some other maladaptive pattern from the family of origin. We talk a lot about systems thinking and psychology and family of origin, and maybe it's not. I'm thinking of nature versus nurture. In this way, like, yeah, if I am in a certain family of origin, that the nurtured pattern is dismissiveness, dominance, and defensiveness, then I simply by proxy am going to take on those characteristics. Now, do I have some sort of like, innate, straight from the womb character flaw, personality disorder? Probably not, but are my chances of forming that higher? Yes, they are. So I wanted to ask you about the nature versus nurture, family of origin, family systems, right? Because we are a product of the families and environment that we come from. What does the research and your experience say about narcissism and also emotional abuse in the systems way of thinking, family origin thinking?
Yeah, I'm either, folks, I'm either onto something or I'm the dullest tool in the shed, and I'm not quite sure which one I am, folks, to be honest with you. So I know the textbooks would say exactly right, that it's family of origin, and there's trauma in the first 5 years, and that's got to be looked at, and da 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 da. I'm going to give you a different slant. While there is all of that stuff in the family of origin, to be sure, when I meet with the 55-year-old, the 60-year-old, 45 to 70-year-old man or woman, what I notice is something called responsibility deficit disorder. Now, there isn't such a thing, so don't look it up. But you can imagine what it would look like if there was such a thing.
Right.
Responsibility deficit disorder. So here's a person, we'll say it's a man, and he's 60 years old and he gets mad a lot. He's got poor impulse control. He's had poor impulse control since he was 6 years old. He's emotionally immature. And when he walks in and when he's talking with me, he says, well, yeah, I got mad, but man alive, you should have seen what this other guy was doing. Or my wife was chirping in my ear, and doggone it, Dr. Hawkins, I mean, anybody would get PO'd at something like that. So yeah, I walked out the door, I slammed the door. Yeah, and I called my wife a name, but I mean, come on, anybody would call it. You don't live with her. All right. No. So do I need to go back to his training as a 6-year-old, or do I need to look at him and go, you know what? That behavior that you just described is really bad. It's really bad behavior, sir. I'm going to work with you, but my goodness, you just justified, you minimized, you rationalized, you blame shifted, you sanitized. I mean, you used and I get a little snarky once in a while, folks, but I say, you just used about 20 thinking errors all in 2 sentences. Do you know that? Well, I don't know. Yeah, that's what you did. You blame shifted, you rationalized, you justified, you minimized, all of those ways to defend yourself. And all of that makes you not responsible. So you have no problem to really own, right? I mean, your point was your wife is the one that needs to change. So, but she's not sitting here. In fact, she gave you a letter last week saying she's leaving you if you don't. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
So do I need to go back to his training? I do, for sure. But I also need to highlight for him, we're going to look at all the ways that you justify your bad behavior. We're going to learn what's wrong with your behavior. We're going to learn about the impact on others, called empathy. which, by the way, can be cultivated. A lot of people don't think so, but the research is really clear about that. Empathy is a learned skill. Thank God. Okay. Fortunately, gives us some hope. And this man who's behaving very badly, if he has a whit of conscience, and most do, I know people are saying, Dr. Hawkins, I don't know about you, man. Anyway, most of the men that come to our center have some degree of conscience. They have some degree of caring about their mate, and they have some degree of wanting to save the relationships. And I capitalize on all that stuff to bring about change.
And that's what you can.
Oh, there's a mouthful.
No, that's a lot. And I love this. Like, and so if there is that little glimmer, then sometimes it's like, okay, that's a little, a little handhold that I can work with to help them get to the toehold to get to the next step.
Exactly. And I ask him the question, what will happen? Let's have a candid conversation, sir. What will happen if you don't change anything? Oh, I don't know. Well, think about it. What will happen? Well, my wife says she's going to leave me. Yeah, she will leave you. In fact, she's already left you emotionally, right? I mean, you guys, there's not much intimacy, right? No. Yeah. And she's not well physically, right? Right. And she's moved away emotionally, right? That she doesn't share much. No. Okay. Anyway, so we bring reality to bear. And then, as I say, most people within them somewhere is the desire to do better.
Yes.
And that's where I just disagree with most others that are out there saying there's no hope. Emotional immaturity is something that can be worked with. It can be confronted, and growth can be taught. And that's what we find. And one more quick little statement about our 3-tiered program. At the first tier, men don't want to be there. So the motivation is external. For sure. I'm here. My wife threatened to leave me. If I got to be in the group, I guess I got to be in the group. By the end of 14 weeks, now they're ready to advance into the advanced core. Well, maybe I need to be here. I mean, I can see some good coming out of it. By the end of the advanced core, I need to be here. I don't hear people talking about that, Seth and Melanie, but we see men who, after a certain point in time, the motivation becomes internal. They like the growth. They like what happens. They like the relationships improving. And they sign up for the advanced core again, or they toggle into our course anyway. So that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, that's really cool. It sounds to me like, something that you're saying without saying is that we do need, in order for this growth and this transition and transformation to happen, you need to have people that you're accountable to. You need to have consistent access to resources. So it's not just like a 1-week thing. It's not a 2-week thing. You're literally talking about what sounds like almost a year, right? You got a 6-month thing. You got 2 14-week things. That's a long time. Yep. And again, I think I think what you're probably seeing in these is that not only is the marriage improved, most likely the relationship with kids is probably being improved as well. Probably relationships at work. There's so much sort of outpouring things that are going to happen in addition to the work that you're mentioning. But again, I want to go back to this idea of like needing to be surrounded by people who are 1, holding you accountable, 2, helping you learn, 3, reminding you of what you're learning, and 4, kind of walking on this journey with you to see your growth as it happens. And I will be 100% honest. I'm pretty sure that my dad is I think there's a name for it. I don't really know what it is. Like, he's the nicest person that you'd ever meet, but there's a layer of narcissism, like that you should be doing everything the way he wants you to do it. And if you're not, there's some sort of like really big flaw in you. Again, I love my dad. He's wonderful. But when you grow up in that type of environment, you don't realize that you have, what did you call it? The like responsibility deficit disorder or whatever you called it.
I love that. By the way.
That is exactly like,
deficit disorder.
Yeah, like I literally remember having conversations with Seth where I was trying to just convince him that I was right. And he just didn't know what was good for him. And I remember one day he was like, who invalidated you for like your whole life? Why are you invalidating me so consistently? And I remember sitting there, I didn't say this, of course, because I wasn't going to be held responsible for knowing the truth. But I was like, my dad, my dad 100% just told me, no, what you think is wrong and what I think is right. And so I was doing this to Seth, full on what you would consider narcissistic behaviors to Seth. But number one, I had no idea. Number two, I had no idea how to stop. And number three, I had no idea how to tell you that I was actually doing it because I had never had to be responsible for anything ever. Didn't know what that looked like.
But I think that the difference between you and, I'm not, again, calling your dad out or other, possible narcissists, when you discovered that information,
yes, you
were willing to take that introspective look and take accountability and stop the RDD, right? The responsibility deficit disorder, and go, wait a minute, let me look at this and let me do what I have to do to do some work around.
In a way, sorry to cut you off, but in a way, it's almost like I was stuck in what I would think of like as a narcissistic cycle. Like I didn't know how to get out of it, but I definitely
maybe
wasn't
like the gravitational pull of being close to a narcissist.
I guess. Yeah. But it's just interesting because like how you're talking about your program working, I could see how that would be so beneficial just for my own, like having accountability around that specific thing, because it's clear to me that it was emotional intelligence that I was lacking, like the empathy side of things, but totally thinking I had it, totally thinking like, no, I know what I'm talking about and you're just wrong. So it's interesting talking to you is, partially like therapeutic for me. Like,
another one of the videos I have all the men watch. There's 10 different videos, and I did a series on what she wants him to know. And video number 5, you will like this, Melanie. You might not, Seth. I don't know if you'll like it. Anyway, video number 5 is entitled "She's Probably Right and She Can Be Trusted." Now let's pause for a second. Really, Dr. Hawkins, you're going to say this to a man? She's probably right and she can be trusted. So, as I say to the man, how many books on understanding marriage have you read? Two, not cover to cover, but 2, I think, 3 maybe. 3. How many has she read? 147. She's got every one of your books. She's watched every one of your podcasts. She's watched every one of your videos. She's da-da-da-da-da-da. What? Why? Why has she done all? What in the world? Why would she watch? Why would she devour all of our YouTube videos? I don't know. You got too much time on her hands, I think. Well, maybe there's another reason. Do you think she's trying to connect with you? Do you think she just really, really, really wants to have a healthy relationship, and she's probably right and she can be trusted. Anyway, the women who call us, they have been invalidated so much, Melody. They've invalidated themselves. So someone has always been saying to them, no, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And it's happened so very much that by the time, this is a true story here, by the time they talk to me and I say, this is really kind of a poignant moment, if I can preface it with that. When I look at her and I say, I believe you. She starts crying. Every time she starts crying, I'm kind of emotional thinking about this, because every time I say, I believe you. You what? I believe you. You believe what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, why would you lie about anything like this? Why would you make it up? Well, you really believe me? Yeah, I believe you. I believe you. And she cries and she says, I never hear that. I never hear that. I never hear the words, I believe you. I get what you're saying. There's truth in what you're saying. You're probably right and you can be trusted. Anyway, so that's a really important place for men to get to. She's probably right and she can be trusted. there's a saying in the 12-step program, self-will run riot. Like your best thinking got you here. Remember that saying out there in the AA programs? Mm-hmm. Your best thinking got you right here, man, right here. So you might want to give it up and give her a shot.
Yeah. So. And that makes me think of two things. One saying, because a lot of the stuff that you're saying, like intense accountability, makes me think of this one guy we follow, former Navy SEAL Jocko Willink. He talks about extreme ownership. And of course, that was in the military vibes of, if you're a commander, you are responsible for your men, the operation, everything falls to you, right? Which is what accountability is something we all need more of, right? And the other one is the idea,
right?
Like your best thinking got you here. Well, every decision and indecision that you've made up until this point has gotten you here, financially, spiritually, marriage-wise, everything. So you must be willing, like a wise person must be willing to go, I don't like where I am. Is it everyone else's fault except for mine? Can I kid myself that much? And if you can, you're in trouble. But that's where change, it's like, okay, in the AA language, NA language, you have to admit that you have a problem first, right? Awareness is curative. You can't get treatment for drugs, alcohol, or anything else if you go, it's not even really a problem. You're not in the pre-contemplation, you're in the denial, right? And then, pre-contemplation, then contemplation, then change. That's where you want to be. And I was thinking, so I know you had mentioned a pastor, and like we're Christian, we profess Jesus and stuff. And like in the spiritual piece, it's like so many verses in the Bible. And if you're not, that's fine. But it's a lot of wisdom talks about, okay.
I am.
Okay, good. A woman, a wise husband should trust his wife's intuition, right? Like oftentimes Melanie has been the metaphorical canary in the coal mine where I have listened to it and dodged bullets for myself, for our family, all that stuff. And unfortunately, I have not listened to it and gone, oh man, I've been dismissive or whatnot, right? But for just the women listening, it's like your intuition is not just you being a nag or just being crazy. Your intuition is given innately by God there, and a wise husband should listen to that, right? It's like, a virtuous wife, who can find kind of thing, some proverbs all over that stuff. And guys, don't dismiss your wife like that, because you are hurting yourself in that. So often we see that as well.
You know that the word for the Greek word for helpmate is I'm not going to even try to pronounce it, but it's the word is used for the Holy Spirit as well. So a helpmate is someone who, at our greatest point of weakness, is able to come in and speak right into that place. So, man, we don't listen to our wives to our own peril. Absolutely, peril. So, no, I'm all about that.
Oh.
I want to mention one more thing about accountability, folks. I'm going to throw a bucket full of cold water on everybody on the word accountability. So I hear people all the time, they'll say to me, Dr. Hawkins, I've got an accountability partner. Oh, really? Tell me about that. Well, it's a Bible study group, and we check in every week. Oh yeah, okay. So they know all about your all your areas of struggle, right? Well, I mean, more or less. What do you mean more or less? Well, do they know exactly how much you lie and your issues with deception and your issues with denial and your issues with blame shift? Do they know all about that? Well, no. Oh, okay. And really? So you check in with them every week? Do you tell them all of the areas that you're struggling every week? And do they know the 10 top things? Well, no. Oh, okay. Then what you mean is they are a support group for you, which is wonderful. Please keep going to your Bible study group, but don't call them an accountability partner, and don't call them an accountability group. Now, an accountability partner is someone who's informed and who has the power, and you've given them the power to speak into your life. So they're willing, they're not your friend, because a friend That's not a friend. A friend is going to like, hey man, come on, I got your back, you got my back. Come on, we're bros, we're friends. Please maintain friendship, but don't call them accountability. So in the field of emotional abuse, Melanie and Seth, we've got a lot of thinking to do about this, about what does accountability for emotional abuse look like? And are we really willing to train some folks up who know all about emotional abuse and narcissism, and they're willing to really dive in and say, hey man, hey woman, I'm gonna ask you some very difficult questions. And that's what we're gonna do here. And then, man, depending on your answers, we'll decide how we're gonna proceed. So, all right, that was a bucket of cold water on the topic of accountability.
No, that's so true.
Yeah, I think that that's really a beautiful thing that you shared. And I'm glad that you shared that, because I do think that people, I don't know, want to put a pretty bow on something ourselves, that, we're just kidding yourselves. But I do want to ask you, with the emotional abuse work that you have done, one of the things that I thought would be really helpful for people to hear, and even in the narcissism realm as well, what are the small first things that feel subtle? Like you go, oh, well, that doesn't really count. Maybe that doesn't really count. Maybe they didn't really mean it. What would be that first layer of wait a second, maybe those things are actually emotionally abusive or narcissistic behaviors? What would be that first layer? Because we all kind of jump to the most severe version, but some of us need to just hear the first layer. What's that first layer? So two things come to my mind, Melanie. I would say invalidation. Again, just, the person, because what should happen, when our mate comes to us and says, hey, I'm feeling lonely. What I should say as a caring husband is, tell me about that. Tell me some more about, my wife's name is Christy. Tell me some more about feeling lonely. If I do anything else, lonely, honey, we went out on a date last Friday night. How is it possible that you feel lonely? What are you? Okay. So invalidation is one of the first layers, and the opposite of invalidation, of course, is validation. So that is so subtle, and it happens again and again and again. And then part of invalidation, Melanie, would be blame shifting. Lonely, it's actually not me, Christy. It's you, because I took you out on a date on Friday night, and you don't seem to be thankful. So the problem isn't with me, the problem's with you. All right. If I do that again and again and again, if I blame shift again and again and again, that's going to erode the fabric of our marriage. It's going to erode her self-esteem. So those are the two things that come to my mind. That's super helpful. Is there again, I'm just going to ask then what's the next click up? Because again, I think sometimes when people are in this, they have a hard time seeing it. And so I want to paint pictures of what would be the next level up of I've been invalidated, et cetera, and now this next layer of behavior. And I know it's not that cut and
Would it
dry.
be the next layer of behavior for the person? Okay, I need to...
No. The emotional abuse behavior.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the second one would be blame shifting. Where a person, my mate, comes to me, and not only do I not hold space for her concerns, but I tell her that something wrong or bad about her to even bring that concern to me. So if I do that, if I invalidate and I blame again and again and again, over time, in fact, it doesn't take very long at all for that to erode the fabric of my marriage. Because a marriage is based upon a connection, upon trust, validating my mate's concerns and her validating my concerns. That's got to be that mutuality. And if there's invalidation and if there's blame shifting again and again and again, that may not look like much, but if it happens on a regular basis, that is going to be catastrophic.
Absolutely, because then you're creating just a maladaptive reaction to everything. It's the water that the marriage swims in is tainted.
Yeah.
It's poison. So hopefully you can hear me here. Yeah. And I do want to be respectful of time. But I part of me as a therapist, or like maybe kind of like trying to attend to people's feelings or assuming what they may be thinking to some degree when they hear this. Sometimes podcasts like this and topics like this, one person may hear it and go, yes, see, what Dr. Hawkins is saying is completely right. And then this just adds fuel to the fire. I hate my spouse even more. I want to blame. I don't want people to listen to it, to hear these words and use it as a weapon, as fuel to, I want it to be growthful, right? I want everybody to have an open mindset and open for change. Change is possible. But what advice can you give? What advice could you give? And I want to actually specifically speak to the women here, because I think this is probably more of a male trait that goes on, like the dismissiveness, the defensiveness, and stuff like that. But a wife hears this and goes, yes, Dr. Hawkins is speaking my language. This is happening. And I just hate my husband even more. We're just starting the worst spiral ever. I don't want people to do that. I want people to take a balanced approach towards healing. So how can we encourage the wives who are listening in that way?
Seth, you're absolutely right that we're trying to thread a needle here. So on the one hand, I don't want her to just be, hey, honey, I'm really trying to give you a message here. She's been trying that for a long time. She's really tried to be heard. She's exhausted now. So on the other hand, I don't want her to bring a club, but there's a way to be firm and clear and filled with conviction. So let's just use those C words: calm, clear, confident, but with conviction. Mm-hmm. So look, there is something wrong in our relationship. There's something wrong here. I love you. I care about you. I want our marriage restored, but there's something wrong. And I want us to get professional help from someone who, I think I know some of the things that are going on. I don't know everything, but please hear me. I'm committed to you. I'm committed to our marriage. I'm not talking any D word. I'm not talking the S word, separation, divorce. I'm not talking that, but I am using the C word, change. There must be change. And we must tag on to someone who knows about these kinds of issues, and we can follow their leadership, and they will guide us into a healthier marriage. And that's what I want. So she can't soft step this stuff. It's got to be, there has to be change. And frankly, and Seth and Melanie, you may agree with me, you may disagree. By the time people reach me, there has to be significant change. Mm-hmm. I mean, folks, I'll guide you into a new direction, but it's going to require significant change. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about it every step of the way. I will be respectful, but let's do it. Let's get the job done. So that's what I think threading the needle looks like.
That makes a lot of sense, and I hope that that is not divisive to marriages, right? A lot of times, folks, listeners want to get on an exploratory call with us. We say all the things we can work on and do this. One person isn't open to it. Of course, we know that we can help them, but then sometimes they don't do it, and then we get emails, later, a couple of weeks, a couple of months later, it's like, oh, things actually got worse, because we saw what we could do. One person wasn't willing. They were still playing the blame game, no accountability. And then it just gets worse, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think that the marriage space needs more of that. I want to give hope and hold up a mirror to folks who are practicing bad behavior and asking the question like you asked, hey, what do we expect if nothing changes? Mm-hmm. That saying, nothing changes if nothing changes. Geez, I can't think of anything more true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, where can our listeners go to find more about the work that you do and to find about the programs that you run?
Absolutely. So our website is www.marriagerecoverycenter.com. marriagerecoverycenter.com, and I'll give a shout out to one of my books. One of my books is When Loving Him is Hurting You. That's the one, and a second one actually done with my sons, who are both physicians, where we talk about the physical impact of emotional abuse, that book is called In Sickness and in Health, and written with my two sons, who are smarter than me, and that's probably the way it should be. But anyway, so thank you, folks. And I know this is a complicated topic, and I really appreciate your approach today, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to our listeners going and reading your books and learning more about what you do. And it's just been a really, really great call. We'll have to connect again when you get back in Seattle.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you again.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Dr. Hawkins, thank you so much, man.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Anatomy of Us. This podcast is produced by my mom, Melanie Studley, and hosted by my dad, Seth Studley. Our show is edited and published by our producer, Reba Hansen, from Creative Media Support. Special thanks to our Patreon members that get an extra episode every week. Thanks for watching. Love you. Bye.